Is there anything that specifically that you would want to cover? Anything in your classes that's been tricky or could use anything help on? Strings. Okay. And just I was just wondering, did you come to any of the previous webinars or is this the first one? Okay, so you saw all of the variable stuff. Okay. So we're gonna use the ebook again. Let me pull it up. Um, are you able to see the ebook? For me, it's showing up all green, which is strange to me. Are you able to see what's on the screen? Anything on the screen besides like green, or are you seeing the ebook? Let me try again. So can you still only see my profile picture? Now it's nothing. I don't really know what the deal is. This usually just works well like that. Let me try again. Let me see if I can do it like this. Oops. Um, where is it? 1 second. Okay, so now are you able to see? Now are you able to see what's up? For some reason it's being a little buggy, but I can. So I might have to. I might not see all your comments right away, so I'll have to switch back and forth. Um, for now, you should be able to see the ebook, right? Let's just go straight to strings. Uh, so what can you tell me about strings right now? Is it, yeah, stuff in quotes. That's basically it. It's just either words or characters that are just put in quotes, and basically Java treats them as if they're as if it doesn't even look at what's inside. It just sees the quotes. It says, okay, that's a string. It's some characters. The user will do whatever they want with it. So is there any particular part of strings that's confusing, or would you just want me to go over kind of it from beginning to end? String methods. Okay. So, and let me give you the link to the ebook in case you need it. So these are the methods on the exam. There are a few more, but these are the major ones. So length. Length is a really useful one. So how you run it is, in general, how you use any method is you take the object, which is just like, or object or variable that's of type string, and you do dot length, and then open and close parentheses, and that'll give you a integer that will tell you the length of the string, which is the number of characters. So that includes spaces, that includes punctuation. Remember, Java has no idea what's going on inside the string. It doesn't even look at it. So it just looks at anything spaces, punctuation, random characters, they all get counted. And this is an important note that people tend to forget, especially when just starting out. The first index is 0. And so if you want to look at the last letter in last character in a string, then it's the length minus 1. So the 13th position is at length at index t. So that's the length method. Substring. So you have the entire string, but what substring does is, or well, what do you know about substring right now, and what do you think it does? No idea. So substring is if you just want part of a string, right? So say you have, this is our example string. So if you did substring, say if you did, say this message is, this string is called message, right? Or let's say it's called test. So you do test.substring, and say you wanted just this part, right? So you do the starting index. So it starts at index 0, and then the ending index is index 3. So if you did, um, so this is the example right here. System, if you just printed the message 0 to 3, what do you think this part will print out? This? Right. Let's just check. Oh, yeah. So sorry about that. I may have told you something slightly, um, something incorrect. It's not directly at 3. It goes up till 3. So that's something that trips me up sometimes too, obviously. Um, it doesn't include the index that you give it. So it'll give you everything up to 3. So what would you need to do to make it this? What would you need to change to make it this? Zero to 4? Right. Where did it go? So how about if you want it to print is? What would you think you would need to put in? 5 to 6? So what exactly, so we're going to be using the substring method. So you say system.out.println message1 substring 5, 6. So it only printed I. So, okay, right, 5 to 7. Because it's pretty tricky, but yeah. So you want to go one past the index you stop at. Uh, okay. How about if you want to print the entire? What do you think would happen if you put something like this? 10 to 15. So it's going to throw an error. So do you have any idea why that error might have happened? And this is the, you can see the indexes for everything here. And just to make it a little bit more clear, I'll just make this like 20. No, still 30 error. It went past the number of indexes, right? So what substring is doing is trying to say, okay, from 10, just keep on giving me everything after that until the 20. So it tries to look, once it gets past like 13, it goes to 14 and says, okay, add whatever is in index 14 to my string, to this to the output, and it's not finding anything. So that's an index out of bounds error. So that's something you want to be careful of. Make sure your substring fits within the region. So how about this other example where you're just putting in one number? Is that going to throw an error or do anything else? You don't know. Okay, let's just try it. So what it does in cases where you just give it one number, what it does is it just, if you don't specify this, it just assumes you want to go to the end. Because so you, if that way you don't need to like, in this other example when we're doing the 10 to 20 thing, say you don't like know where the end of the string is, you don't want to guess, and it might be annoying to just like look up what the length of the string is and subtract one just to get to the end. So you could just do this and it would just give you a test. Okay, so that's what substring basically does. Uh, index of. So have you seen any of these or have any ideas what you think index of might do? Returns the value of the index. So which index would you guess? So let's just looking based off of like what you have to enter in. It's returning and yeah, you're right. It returns the index and you pass in a string. So say so what it, I guess I'll just say it what it does. Uh say if you want to know where test is in this string, like say you have like a large string and you think the word you think you want to check if that string has um the like substring test in it, you can kind of like ask the string with index of, and it'll tell you either it's not in the string or it's at this location of the string. So if we run the code for that, what do you think that this will return? Or what do you think it'll print out? And the 14? So yeah, it doesn't really, there's not really a good way for it to return like 10 to 14 because, you know, like most classes, most methods just want to return like basic primitive types. So there's not really like a, there's not really an easy type of structure that would say like 10 to 14. So what string does is, what index of does is it just returns 10, which is where test starts. And presumably, since you're the one telling it, hey, like this is what string I need to return, you know the length. So if you give it the start, you can figure out where the end is as well. Right. And it returns an int. Right. Um, so what do you think would happen if I did this? So that's not in the string. So what do you think it should return? Error. So actually what it does is it returns -1, because the thing about errors is like most of the time errors are okay there, but like imagine you have like some system running, right? So an error is going to kind of crash your system. So that's not really what you necessarily want here. You just want to kind of like say, have something friendly, say we couldn't find the string in there. So what it does is return -1. So if you get -1, like -1 can't be an index in a string, right? Because it starts at 0. So it returns -1 just to kind of let you know it's not in any of the parts of the string. So I'm just telling you -1 just to tell you it's not in there. And that way, like what you'd have to do is if you're writing some code or something that takes into account when you return, when you do this, like if say you set something equal to, say you set like string output equal to this, you'd want to what you'd want to do is you'd want to do some sort of check, right? You would want to say like if output equals 1, then do something else, right? Because you don't want to, you only want to do that thing, you might only want to do that thing if you can find it in there. And if you can't find it in there, then you want to handle it by yourself, right? You don't want to throw an error and have it like crash your entire code. Right. So index of, that's pretty much it for that one. I can't think of anything else too important from that. Note that it is case sensitive. So if you do system.out.line, if you did like capital T, then it'll return -1. So that's just something to make sure about. Yeah, it's kind of tricky. You have to, like, if you don't know about it ahead of time, like you might just like write your program assuming that it's in there. So you kind of had to like you kind of have to like remember, or when you're like debugging, try to give it an example that kind of fails it, and that way you can kind of say, oh, in this case it'll return -1. I gotta do something to handle that. So here, another method is compare to. So you can compare ints pretty easily, right? You just want to say if like if you compare 5 and 3, you can say, okay, 5 is bigger than 3. So how do you like usually compare strings? Do you have any ideas? Well, I mean, like just like even ignoring Java or anything else, just like if I told you like in general, like, if you wanted to know like I guess this is kind of like a weird question. Basically, what trying to get at is that compared to kind of like the comparison is alphabetical order, basically. So, uh, what the when you use it is like, say you want to compare, uh, so you have a hello, right? And you want to compare that to, um, let's compare it to and. One of these is, just ignore all these. So which of these is comes first in alphabetical order? Easy question, right? And and is going to come first in alphabetical order. So you run that, and what it does is you don't need to worry too much about like the actual number, but what that 7 tells you is that hello is what positive tells you is hello's after um and so what do you think you'd get if you compared it to zoo, which hello is earlier than 18? Negative 18, right? So the important thing is the number itself, like it might be useful in some cases, but the major thing is you want to know either positive or negative, right? So zoo, since zoo is after hello, when you compare hello to zoo, it's basically saying hello by having a negative 18, that's saying that hello comes before zoo. And like in the previous example, hello, since hello comes after and, it give you a positive number. Um, so what do you think it would be in cases where they're equal? 0, right? Yeah, so it's 0. Um, what about, so it's easy to remember for normal comparing. But say like you got like some weird strings, right? Say you got something like caret sign, plus sign, minus star, and then say you're comparing it to something like that. So you're comparing it to like the squiggly line 3 equals, oops, 3 equals close parentheses or something. So, or yeah, something like this. Uh, do you have any idea how it would figure it out or what it would do? So, right. So you're kind of on the right track with the 26 thing. Um, and what's useful here is the ASCII table. So you probably don't need to like worry too much about this. I doubt you'll need to see this on the AP, but just to let you know, like this is how, besides all the like other, like the standard alphabet parts, which are like here, everything has like a number. Every character has like a number associated with it. So like the plus sign is has a number 43 associated with it. Like the number 4 has the number 52 associated with it. So those are like kind of like its reference point. So um, the later you are, the bigger number you have, the later you are in alphabetical order. So based on this table, can you tell me which would come first between hello or hello from this table? Sorry, I had to keep on switching back and forth just to see if you chatted something or, but to also let you see the table. Yeah, usually it lets me screen share and I like tested it out beforehand and it was working. So I don't know what the deal is. So the start of the string for the capital one is going to be at 72. The lowercase h is at 104. Oh, there's some lag. Yeah, so my question was, say we're comparing hello with a capital H with hello with a lowercase h. So the question is, which one comes first alphabetically, do you think? Given this table says that capital H is associated with number 72 and lowercase h is associated with 104. Right, capital H comes first. And if you compared here, you'd get that. So yeah, the negative means that this thing you're starting, the string you're using comes before the string you're comparing to. So that's good. Anything else about that I should cover? On the right track with the numbers, basically the number the difference is that number is calculated from like the difference in the strings here, but you don't really need to worry. Almost ever, you don't really need to worry about those differences in the strings. I've only had to maybe had to use it once for, and that was for some like very specific thing. So I think there's one other function that you need to know for the AP for sure. So that's called that's the equals method. So you want to, a lot of times, so if generally if you have two classes, right, and you have two objects of, or you say you have two objects, and you like say you have like class one, object one, and class one, object two, and say you like instantiated them to be like goes new class one object, or class one equals new class one. So normally if you just like said, basically did like an if statement, if object one equals object two, and like these, and you didn't like say these were like pretty much empty objects, they didn't really do anything, they didn't have anything coded up, this would return false, even if like the objects did the exact same thing, they didn't have any different data. Do you have any idea why? kind of tricky. So yeah, so say you make like two objects. Oh, you know what? I won't bother with the question. It's kind of like a dumb question. Uh, so basically, if you try to compare these two, it would say that this is false. Um, and the reason why I would do that is because so do you know anything about like classes or like subclasses or anything like about that? Have you covered any of that in your class? Or like inheritance or any of those, anything that sounded like that? Superclass, parent class, child class? No? Okay. So we'll cover that in more depth for sure later, and you'll probably see it in your class. So I won't dwell too much on that. But basically what it is that all all these classes are generally are called subclasses of the object class. So any class you make is generally going to be it'll be a subclass of something that like it'll somehow relate back to the object class. And what happens is the object class has a few methods that are like written, and one of them is equals. And what that equals method does is it says if I go into the computer's memory or Java's memory and I look at the exact locations where these two are stored, are they going to be the same thing? Are they going to be the same place? So that's not that useful most of the time. Most of the time, sometimes it will be useful, but in this case, in most cases right now, you probably won't find that to be that useful because who cares if they're the exact same object? If they have like all the same properties, that's generally good enough. So so what the string class does is it knows that that's generally what you mean, right? You want to just compare if you have two strings, if both of these strings say this is a test, you should consider these two message one and message two equal. So um, basically all this method does is it takes in the two strings and checks to see if they're the same string. So sorry, I think I might have rambled a bit on that one. So if you have questions or you didn't understand what I'm saying, feel free to have me repeat it. Uh, but what do you think will happen when I print out this line? True, right? And say you have something like, hey, is it going to print? What do you think it'll say here? False, right? Yeah, there's like the the like reasons behind this can be a little bit complicated, but in practice, that's um, how you do it. So the important thing to know is if you want to compare strings ever, like generally when you're comparing ints, like in an if statement or something, how would you do it? Like if you had like int I equals 5 and you had int j equals 7 and you wanted to write like an if statement around that. So what would you like put inside this if statement to compare I and j? Do you remember? Have you covered this in your class? Yeah, right. So I equals j. Uh, but so but with strings, what you want to do is you want to use this dot equals method. So what you can use, you can just use this dot equals method. So what you do is, if this was like string I and string j, or we can just use message and something like that. You could just say like if message equals hello, then do whatever. So okay, so let's do some questions about these. One second, just give me 1 second. Okay, so let's do this first question, 4, 2, 1. So what is the value of S1 after the following code executes? Oh, and by the way, 2 lowercase is it just makes it lowercase. That's all that it just turns capital letters into lowercase letters. Hi. Okay, so let's take this step by step. So you start with S1 equals hi, right? With capital H. So what is let's just take this next line. So when S2 takes S1 dot substring 0 to 1, what is an S2 at that point? Yeah, capital H. So and then S3, and then from here, so you have a capital H, so then you're taking S2, which is just capital H, and you're doing a 2 lowercase function. So what is going to be that? Say lowercase h, right? Okay, sorry. This is a trick question, pretty much. So why is it not lowercase h? Because they're asking for the value of S1, and so lowercase h is in S3. But since S1 is never changed, right? You're like you're calling methods on S1, and then but you just put the result into a new string. You're not putting it back into S1. This question is, what is the answer to this question going to be? Yeah, just capital high, right? And the reason for that is that strings are immutable. And what that means is once you create a string, that's what you can't like just say like you couldn't do you couldn't say like message you couldn't go into message and try to like change the first letter, right? You couldn't go into the first letter and say make the first letter J or something to turn it into Jello. You can't just go in and change the string. There are some things you can do. You can like, for example, if you wanted to do this, say you wanted this to become Jello, what you could do is you can just directly change it. But you wouldn't be able to like just change one letter of it. Whoops. Oh yeah. Whoops. Still errors. Oh yeah. So yeah, so strings are immutable. That's the lesson, that you can't change one part of the string just by doing a method. You either just add a new string or keep the same string, or do it into a new string. So then this is the other problem where it'd be lowercase h if you just check an S3. Okay, so let's do this problem. So the thing you got to watch out for here is, I don't know if we talked about this earlier, but what do you think would happen if the substring appears more than once in the main string? Do you think it would give you the index of the first B, the index of the second B? Would it give you an error? Would it say -1? What do you think would happen? Get the last B? So what index would that be? Four, right? Okay, so what? So the thing about index of is it goes left to right. So once it finds that first B, it doesn't look at the rest of the string. So what it really is going to be is just one, because it's going to find that first B. It goes from left to right, so it's going to find that B and just stop. Because think about it, if you had like a really long string and the B was the first letter, it prefers to not have to go through the entire string to look for other B's if it can find a B right away. Okay, so let's do this next question. So what is the length of this string? 8. So let's just count that out. So you have 4 letters in miss, 5 for the space, 3 more for U, so that's 8 plus the exclamation point. So it ends up being an, oh, okay. So the thing is, len gives you the length, but so you're right that like if you wanted to look at m, that would be at index 0, but this is just giving you length just gives you the number of characters. So there's 9 characters. Even though the last index is at 8, it's 9 characters. So yeah, it's kind of tricky. So if you want to access the last character of any string, what you have to do is you have to do something like say you want to print the last string, you could do something like this: substring message one length, or yeah, the length -1. This should print out. Oops, I must have. Yeah, forgot it. Got a parentheses T. So this will give you the last thing. So yeah, the last character is always at the string.length minus 1. Okay, so last question for here. So let's do this question here. Hi, TH. And that's correct. Right. Okay, let's see if anything else we want to cover in strings. We have a few more minutes, so let's just go ahead and cover some of the other parts of strings real quick. I think everything else is a little bit simpler, or a little bit shorter. So this is what I was kind of talking about earlier. So if you run this, what do you think will happen once we run this? What do you think is in S2? Right? That's right. Because it just takes the value of S2. So, but the thing is, by the way, since the way you assigned S3 was by just saying it's equal to S2, S3 and S2 are like literally the same, refer to the same place in memory. They refer to the exact same object. Both S2 and S3 just point to S2. So that's a case where they're like completely equal. So, but if you did something like this, then they would, even though they both still print by, S3 is no longer the same object as S2. So that's not a huge deal, but it can have some implications, right? So what do you think, based kind of based on that, what do you think will print out when you compare S1 and S2 here with the double equals? False. And why would you say that it's false? They're two different locations in memory. Right. So if you printed that out, would show up false. But what would happen if you compared using the dot equals method? True, right? Right. So there's one question with that one. So you have one string that's set to high this way. Oh, I don't know if we covered this or if you were unsure about this, so I'll just mention it. There's two ways to basically make a string. You can either directly set it to these to put the quotes and put something in it, or you can say equals new, then string, then you put the string inside the parentheses. And like this is generally how you make objects like of any type, but for strings you can just do this instead. But in the future you'll be seeing a lot of things of this type format. But anyways, that's kind of beside the point. So would you are any of these equal after all this runs? Are any of these equals like double equals true? B. Okay. Correct. Right. So I think you got the hang of that. Anything else in strings? Concatenation. So this is a really useful thing, especially if you're like printing out things. So say you want to like write a program that no matter that like you give it, so you pass in a name and no matter what that name is, it says like happy birthday to that name. So to do that, you can just kind of add strings together and it'll like just smush them in. So if you have one string that's happy birthday, you have a string for a space, and then you have another string that's the name, you can print it out and it'll combine them. So how would you based on that add an exclamation point to the end of the string? Right. So plus exclamation point, run, and it'll add the exclamation point. And you should remember about the space. That's like an easy thing to forget, but if without it, it'll just smush them together automatically. Okay, and this is a pretty neat thing, a useful thing. You can add things to a string just like this. So it can be kind of annoying to convert, like say you're like reading in things or in things like that. It's really annoying to convert between string versions of numbers and regular versions of numbers. So Java kind of takes care of that in some ways. So if you print this out right here, even though the 4 and 3 are integers, since we're adding it to a string, it'll just automatically convert those into strings. But that's also, and that's something to like you can play around with a bit. But important things to note are that it only starts doing that once it finds a string, right? So it only reads it like one part at a time. So at first it's reading 4 plus 3, and it thinks, okay, it just wants me to calculate 7. So calculate 7, then it moves to this part and it says 7 plus the string 1, 2. Oh, okay, I need to convert this to a string. So it'll say 7, 1, 2. So that's something kind of tricky. Say you wanted to print 4, 3, 1, 2, but you wanted to leave these as ints. Do you have any idea for how you would do that? Like you want the output to be, or you want the output to print 4312, but you want to leave these as a string, this is a string, and these two as ints. Any ideas? Okay, yeah, this is kind of tricky. So what you can do is just put an empty string in front and add that. Empty string doesn't contain anything, but since you're adding an empty string to 4, right from the beginning, it knows, hey, we need to turn this 4 into a string. So then this will become a string version of 4, add it to the 3, add it to the 1, 2, and you'll get 4, 3, 1, 2. Okay, I don't think there's anything else we'll cover today because it's been about an hour. So do you have any other lasting questions or anything else you're still a bit confused on? Okay. Well, we'll have 2 webinars every week, so and we'll also like respond to emails. So if you email like either one, you can either email me at nimeshtodi@gmail.com, or you can email like Project Rise Up GT at Gmail, and someone will probably respond to there. I think later on we'll be setting up some sort of forum. I don't know if anyone's done that yet, but we'll have a like group where you guys can ask questions anytime. But if that's it, we'll stop for today. And thanks for coming. And I'll stop the broadcast.